Good morning, guys. This is Spokane. I invite you to bring your coffee. Bring your snacks. This is pre-church coffee hour. And call convention back to order and invite dispatch to give announcements.
It appears that whoever wanted to see me do this is not in here. However, I shall do it anyway. I got a piece of paper. I don't have an announcement. Anonymous, please do the air quotes out loud. If you are looking to purchase swag, the time to do that is before worship. Remember, that's over on this side of the room. And a reminder, I don't have a blank piece of paper. I don't, but I'm just going to give you the microphone.
Let me entertain you. I would like to ask the clergy and all of their people to remember that we need suitcases for the foster children suitcase ministry that we do in Orville. So if you would remember to bring them or send them with your clergy to clergy retreat in February, then I can take them home from there. Thank you.
And then the final reminder to return your name badges to the box, which is outside and on the table at registration. That should be it.
Thank you, dispatch. Well, it is a delight. Wendy, come on up. It's been a delight to have Wendy with us this weekend. Yeah. And she is seeing that in classic Diocese of Spokane fashion, this session is lighter attended as they check out of the room and eat breakfast and all that. But it's classic Episcopal fashion. The pews fill, as worship gets closer. Back to front.
I guess the benefit of having an aging parent is that my mother is more willing to sit up front with me now than she used to be because she can hear better. But I always love to sit in the front, and she is just scandalized by that.
So growing up, our pew was the third from the front on the right. As an adult, prior to seminary, my pew was the last one in the back on the right. But that way I could see better. I theologized it, right? Wanted to see all God's people. So this is a time for open conversation and questions. And Leo, I did forget to ask if we had some roving mics. And I would ask the first one, Wendy, if you were to, from your perspective of thinking about discipleship and everyday discipleship and families, and what would be a hope you would have for the Diocese of Spokane?
I hope that you go back into your congregations and you ask the same questions that we've asked here and start recording the stories of everyday discipleship in your own congregation, and that you do that with people of all ages. I will say that Andrea has some great storytelling tools that she gave to the 6 storytellers we had, and she will provide those. And the booklet we used is available for you as a Word document, so you can pick and choose among, what was in there. And there are even more resources that we can give you. She'll give you my email address. You can let me know what you're looking for, and I will help you find what you need. But these stories of everyday discipleship are really important, and your people have them. Have dozens, hundreds, thousands among this community of the diocese, and there will be ways to share them.
Thank you. I remember a number of years ago, we were encouraged to film people's stories, and that was more difficult, but now it is really easy. So let me give you a little clue. When you're filming somebody, you want to film horizontal, not vertical. Horizontal. It's better, and you actually want the subject of your film not to be dead center, but slightly off. That's a filmmaker's technique that I was taught, not that I have any knowledge of other than somebody told me that.
The filming is really good to get your young people involved in, because they're going to be much better at it than you are.
Hey,
Just saying.
yeah.
They're good at editing too. My son's a whiz at that.
And one of the things about, there's lots, I remember the convention where we spent way too long debating the evils of social media, and I do think that the guy actually had a point now looking back. But one of the things about social media that's helpful is you learn things that you wish you had known the day before. Such as, yesterday was the 25th ordination anniversary of our dean.
Oh.
All right, questions for Wendy? Or me, or comments, or anything? Because, without questions, we can pontificate. Yes, Jonathan.
Feel free, both of you, to answer. Bishop, it ties into a question I had raised at the Rockwood luncheon. But thinking about the different gifts that age groups give to one another, what would you say are the things that groups need to learn from each other within a church? So what is the unique voice or gift that the children offer, the youth, young adults, the middle-aged, the elders in particular? How do we begin to teach one another better, form one another better in terms of those unique gifts and things that we bring from that experience in life?
You have to start with a relationship, and it takes a while to build relationships among generations. So you've got to get people together in settings usually around food. Food really helps. I often hear from a particular ministry or group that they want to get the 20s and 30s involved, or the youth involved, or families involved, and yet they don't have the relationships. So there's no good way of doing that. So as often as you can have these first cross-generational events and make them intergenerational by being very intentional about asking people to find members of different generations to sit around a table and start to connect. And there are great, conversation prompts that you can even theme that everyone can respond to, but those relationships have to come first, because you're not going to be able to do anything else, not really even be able to go the next step to whatever it is that you're wanting to do together until those relationships start to form. And you've got all kinds of opportunities throughout the church year to do those things. That's the wonderful gift of the liturgical calendar. The liturgical calendar is your friend. So, as much time, especially post-pandemic, people are not used to sitting down together and really talking. But that's where it starts.
Yeah, and I would add that, as I said, I think one of the ways to build those relationships is to invite stories, right? So, and I mean, the church is the one place in our society where actually all the generations show up together, right? So don't banish one of the generations to the basement. That would be useful, right? And don't worry about different generations running around at coffee hour. I always say I want age-appropriate behavior, which means a 2-year-old can have a temper tantrum, but the 40-year-old should not.
Right.
And so part of that is, but I really do think, I mean, our elders have amazing stories. They are still with us faithfully. Right? So what was their childhood like? Right? I mean, I'm continually struck, and I'll tell the story without asking permission. When I asked my mother if you could only have one modern convenience, what would it be? And Mom said, running water. Wow. And it never occurred to me that running water would be considered a modern convenience. I mean, hearing the stories of our elders helps us. And also, hearing the stories of our children, right? So asking our children about what they're going through and really listening, really being curious, right? And then being courageous enough to adapt based on what we hear. So somebody asked me, what do we mean by adapt? And it's little things like, if young parents today don't want their kids in the nursery, don't expect that they'll put them there. Or make them put them there, or shame them for not. Right? I mean, parents today parent differently than my parents parented. It's not right or wrong, it's just different. So really being open and curious and sharing stories and creating those opportunities to get to know one another. I mean, what I find is the kids that often grow up in the church grow up with many, many grandparents. That's a gift. But we have to make sure that we create that environment where that gift can be offered and received.
We have decades now of longitudinal research that shows what leads to an adult faith. And it is not clergy, it's not sermons, it's not Sunday school, it's not youth group.
They actually should know this. I've asked them many times, what's the number one way that our children have faith as an adult?
From their
Growing
parents.
up in our family.
From their parents who are active in their faith and who talk about matters of faith at home. But after that, it's connection to other adults in the faith community and participation in worship. So banishing them to the basement or even providing Sunday school during worship, those will not get you adults in church in 20 years.
Question over here.
Okay. Mine are comments, not questions, just to help some of you out. Tuesday mornings, we get together in one of the local coffee shops for breakfast. One of our parishioners is 96 years young, and I don't think he'd be skiing this year, but as of last year, he was still skiing on Schweitzer. Thursday mornings, we have crafts with the women of the church. You know, you can do all kinds of just, breakfast, lunch, have a craft day or anything to get your people together outside the...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I saw Jane with the hand.
I'm Margaret from St. Stephen's in Spokane, and I would like to share that we recently, in the back of our nave, there is space, and we recently fixed that up for the nursery children. We have quiet toys, small chairs, we have books, we have color crayons, quiet things. And we now have 3 brand new babies. And they are with their mothers in the back of the church. And the little 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds, and they are quiet. And you might hear them talking just a little bit, but it's okay. And yes, there's 2 or 3 or 4, and I'm old, but they're old, people that think the children should be in the nursery. And I think it's great that they're in the church. we had a new couple come with a little 5-year-old, and apparently they had been looking and going to different churches. And this little boy said to his parents after the second visit, I want us to keep coming here because when they pray, you can tell they really mean it.
Oh,
Now that says something. So bring children into the church.
Thank you.
so it was down here with Jane and Julie.
I was just going to add that one thing that I have found helpful is not setting arbitrary age limits on things, either minimum or maximum. To serve as an acolyte, you need to be large enough to be able to carry the cross or the torches, and of a temperament to sit still for a little while. But that usually means about 3rd grade at a minimum, but I have a woman who is in her 70s who is delighted to serve as a crucifer because she was not allowed to as a child. She was not allowed to be an acolyte. Likewise, we have readers in their teens, lectors who are trained and who serve. If you are tall enough, if you are old enough to read fluently in front of people, you are old enough to read in the church. And we don't set age limits, either minimum or maximum. Where is God calling you? And that has made a huge difference for many people of many ages to see many ages serving. And if y'all haven't signed up to do those things in church, do that, because you always need more.
Thank you. I grew up in an intergenerational church, St. Mary's in Laguna Beach, California. And when I was 14, I taught Sunday school, I was a lector, I sang in the choir. I was on my church's Christian education committee, which met on Sunday afternoons so I could attend the meetings. And that was the year my parents separated, and for a while my mother was too sad to come to church. I got on the bus and I went by myself because I was pretty well convinced they could not have church without me.
So when I was a kid growing up at St. James, we had 2 deacons, Ed Stever and Ted Nitz, who trained the deacons. And one of the things I was taught by the deacons was that the acolyte's job was to know the service so well that they could make sure the priest did it correctly. And so we really were fully engaged because we believed the worship required us to be participating. It might have been a little trickery, you know, but. And I had a kid when I was at Nativity who came to the 7 a.m. Eucharist by himself. And that was on a Wednesday morning. And when he was, I think, 10 or 11, as I'm about to distribute communion, he said, "Would you like me to help you with the wine?" And I said, "You mean today?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Why don't I train you first?" But from then on, every 7 a.m., he showed up and acolyted and served as a chalicer. Yeah, no age barriers. They just need to be able to do it. Encouraging, yes.
Turnaround's fair play. When we were in Pullman in the time that Gretchen's talking about, I had 2 children, and the little boy was 2, and his daddy was up front. So I would make sure I sat in a pew where I had long legs on one side and long legs on the other. And he would walk back and forth. I go see Daddy. I go see Daddy. And of course, the more he did it, the tenser I got. Well, I was sitting in the second pew in the front on the left. So Gretchen's father tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Mom, the only one he's bothering is you."
I loved hearing about kids getting to know other people in the congregation. After my divorce, when Shayna was very small, I was in choir. She sat with different people in the congregation, and I'm sure that helped form her to the person she is now. She learned from the older people in the congregation, and I give thanks to God for that.
Coming from Dallas, Texas in 2016 to the Spokane Diocese, one thing I really hope that may resurrect one day in the future is Cursillo weekends again. That was a wonderful experience for me. I got so much out of it. And so at my table, when I did our prayer meditation, I actually gathered acorns and gave one to each one of my table members. That's a piece of palanca. That's a reminder to take it as a symbol of faith to continue to grow your faith.
Yeah, and Cursillo, for those who don't know it, is sort of a short course in Christianity. It's an intense immersion experience. We have intense immersion experiences for a variety of age groups. We have New Beginnings, in fact, will be coming up in November for middle school kids. That's one of those. And intense immersion experiences are helpful. They energize us. Ideally, convention can be an intense immersion experience for the good, right? I mean, they're intended to be ones that help us and propel us and energize us and sort of give us the energy. Cursillo in this diocese ran its course for a while. It needed to be fallow. Like any intense immersion experience, it can become about the experience as opposed to what it's intended to do, which is to deepen our faith and then propel us out to continue to grow and deepen our faith. And it can become about the group versus the following Jesus as a disciple. And any intense immersion experience of any type, secular, religious, has that potential danger of becoming insider language. And church can do the same. Right? When we think about our own communities, if we think about this is family, we love each other. That's what most congregations say. But that can mean that it's very difficult to break in. Even if we think we're warm and friendly. Right? Often we're warm and friendly to each other. And so part of that also, it's always a good caution. How are we embodying God's hospitality, which is always about offering oneself for the sake of the other? And so yes, we are looking at what type of adult weekend formation programs do we need to offer? And part of that is, what do you all need? And what makes sense in today's world? So for instance, we've done some Zoom retreats. That works for some people. Some people don't want a Zoom retreat. How far is someone willing to drive? There's lots of questions, and part of that is why Andrea was saying, what do you need to help grow your own discipleship as an individual and as a whole congregation that we can offer that you can't? Right? So for instance, the diocese can offer diocesan events. Congregations can offer internal congregations, but congregations can work together as well. You can get together and do things together. And how can we help facilitate that if necessary? But I think Cursillo is a great example and a great caution of the intent versus what eventually happened here, which is why it needed to lie fallow. It became an inward-looking, for the sake of us group. And our congregations can become that if we're not careful. If we don't remember why we were called into being. And as we say, we have been gathered by God to be transformed more and more into the people God has created us to be sent out. Right? And that God gathers always, and that God transforms, and God sends. So it's not about us doing it, but us participating in God's work.
That would be my other hope for the diocese after this. Because the stories that you heard were about people whose ministries lay outside the church. And since you are embarking on a season of listening, I am excited for you to go outside your churches and listen to your neighbors and the other organizations in your community and the other places where people gather besides church. And listen and learn from them and make partnerships and find out where there might be need, where you can connect and make a home perhaps for something new to happen, some ground for something new to grow. That's really exciting.
My question is about formation, which is what you were just talking about. I don't come from an Episcopal tradition when I was younger, so there's a lot of experiences I have where I'm learning new language. Say, oh, I already know that, you just use this word for it. Or sometimes I discover something I think is a formal thing and it's just a vague umbrella term. I've heard several times this weekend about formation, and I know I could have asked Andrea questions about formation for years. I just take too long to think about questions before I can speak them. But some of the contrasts I have a question for you, Wendy, is I'm kind of understanding what formation looks like at a congregational level and the resources for that. But one of the things I heard you speak about on Friday was more like a personal formation that you're passionate about. I'm just curious if you could elaborate more on that, what that looks like. You know, I come from a tradition where I feel like I've been having to deconstruct and reconstruct myself in the last decade. So there's a lot of toxic theologies or incomplete theologies or incomplete processes of dealing with the scripture. And I'm just curious if you could elaborate
On personal formation?
Yeah. And what that looks like and why you're passionate about it and maybe some examples.
I will say that I don't believe that we are Christians alone, that we absolutely need community. And there are all kinds of ways that you will find that will deepen your own formation. And so those are paths that you'll choose. And that's what spiritual practices are so helpful for. I found myself at sunrise at the river here, and there's a labyrinth. And as soon as the sun came up, I could see it. And, you know, that's one of my favorite tools for centering and grounding myself. Just the ability to go on a walk and be quiet and be mindful of the world around me is something I don't take for granted after the pandemic. We did not leave our house in Brooklyn for, a very long time. There was a morgue truck parked a mile from us. So when we came out here, the first thing we looked for is, where can we walk? Where can we be in nature? Where can we feel that holy presence? So that is a big part of my spiritual practice now, is getting out and walking either in silence or with just one person in conversation. I find that really helps me go back in to do the work that I need to do. Everyone warned me about the big dark, and my gosh, that's a real thing. So anytime that you can get out in darkness or in light, I think it's really important for your health. I do a lot of reading, and sometimes I need to read things that are not as didactic. So poetry is a wonderful way for me. I also find the Psalms super helpful for my own formation. It's really great for me to remind myself that God can hold everything that I want and need to bring. That I think the Psalms tell us more about human nature than God's nature overall, but just knowing that people have been raging to God for a very long time and rejoicing and bringing, every aspect of human life is I think, really, really a powerful thing. So I doodle the Psalms, a favorite line from a Psalm over and over again. I embellish it. Do you know the website Praying in Color and the books? That's a really helpful tool for me because I don't like to sit entirely still. I need to be doing something. So I commend that to you, prayingincolor.com. That's another great thing that you can find out from conversations with others. What do you do to deepen your own spirituality? And you can try something once, and maybe it doesn't work. Go back to it and try it again, because maybe it'll work later, or move on to the next thing. There's so many fabulous practices to try. So, you know, anything that works for you, I commend that to you. And you'll try a lot of different things. Some things work for a season, some things work for a period of time in your life, and then you can try new things.
Let me just add to that sometimes I find for my own self, the things that don't seem to work for me are exactly what I need to keep working on. So don't give up too soon. Sometimes that's that little stone in the oyster that will help create the pearl.
Wendy, thank you so much for everything that you brought to us this week, and it was really deep and very, very special. I'm taking it back to our congregation, and I'm trying to think about how I would want to bring this to the members of our congregation. And one thought comes in a half-day retreat. One thought comes in Sunday morning coffee hour table talkers, different kinds of things like that. And I just felt like some of the times we were doing things, we just didn't have enough time to do them. And so I'm just curious as to how you would advise in that kind of an approach.
Yes. The 45 minutes that we have between services sometimes is enough for just one of those activities. And when you want to go deeper, you need more time. So we had last year, I advocated for a not so quiet day. Quiet days are lovely, but there are lots of things that you can do that aren't so quiet and really fulfilling. And so that's a very fun way to plan a retreat. Because that includes conversation and being messy, and we had yoga, and you can have Tai Chi, and you can have a drum circle, and on and on. There are all kinds of wonderful ways that then you can separate those with some of the more contemplative times of leading Ignatian imaginative prayer, or the table conversations around lunch. Diving into some of those questions and wonderings.
So I have a question. Well, I don't really have a formed question, but rather a request for comment. Thinking about Christian formation, I'm reminded of a friend of mine, a conversation we had back in our 30s, and he was a defense attorney at the time. He was recently retired as Alaska Supreme Court Justice. But at the time, we were just brand new Episcopalians, and he was saying the importance for him of Christian formation is that as a defense attorney, he wanted to be sure that the jury pool had some sense of shared value so they could come to a reasonable conclusion. And so I wonder, John Westerhoff asked the question, will our children have faith? But that's really inwardly focused. But my friend was thinking about Christian formation societally, outside our walls. So I guess that's more my wonder is about the importance of formation. Not that everyone has to believe exactly the same way as we do, but at least have a sense of shared values, which is not working out so well for our country right now.
Right.
So just your thoughts about that.
While I was at Trinity Church Wall Street, we had the opportunity to offer a lot of things that were not overtly Christian, because we were in Lower Manhattan, in a place where there was a lot of need for gathering and for offering programming, but if it were specifically Christian, it would be a very small audience. So we learned that for things outside of Sundays, really, we could be at our most Christian when we were at our most open. And that's because we had these core values that we'd already identified. And that spoke to people of many faiths and no faith. And so people felt really safe coming in the door and taking part in conversations, sending their kids to a week of camp that was not overtly Christian. It was not Vacation Bible School, but it was grounded in our values. And I think that there's a real need and a place for that. And the Episcopal Church is the ideal place to make those kinds of programs, that kind of opening available. Bishop, you told me a great story about the person who came and did some temp work for you. I wonder if you'd share that.
So when Mallory decided to leave us for a brief period of time, which I am very grateful, actually, that one of the values I have is that we should actually offer parents generous maternity and paternity leave, right? And so, unfortunately, we live in Washington State, which allowed not only our short-term, I don't know why we call it disability when you've given birth, but anyway, that we have through the church, but also through the state. So Mallory was gone for a considerable period of time, and we went through a temp agency to get somebody in. And she was a young woman in her 20s who has a degree and is doing temp work in order to have money to do the work she really likes to do. And so she hosts a radio show, and she writes, and she does a variety of things. And anyway, she was a little worried about working for a religious organization. And when I talked to her, before saying yes to her, one of the things I said is that, it's really important that you understand what we stand for as an Episcopal Church. So you need to know we are fully open and inclusive. And if that is not going to work for you, you just need to know that right up front. She's like, oh, well, that works for me. Like, okay. So, and then she started working, and she was towards the end of her time. I'd sat down multiple times to talk with her about how her experience had been. And one of the things she said was that she was really, really sort of in many ways against or skeptical of, or, really at arm's length with any religious group, organized religion. She goes, you have transformed my understanding of religion and of church, and thank you. And then she said, can I ask you to come and be one of my guests on my radio show, because others need to know that a church like this exists. So.
And I don't think that necessarily means that everyone needs to become Episcopalian or even Christian. I think that there are many paths to God. We have ours. We are following Jesus, and we are clear about that. But when we invite others in and come from a place of shared values, that's really powerful. That's transformational. And we do not lose any bit of our Christian identity when we do that.
Question over here.
I've been in lots and lots of churches over the years because I did a number of interims and have been in different states and different dioceses. This is the best one, actually, of all of them. Thought I should say that. But I made some observations along the line, and wanted to share one. I noticed my kids could size up a congregation faster than I could. What they noticed the second Sunday they were in a church of how different it was from the previous Sunday, it took me 3 or 4 Sundays to see. And I puzzled about that for a while, but I think I came up with the answer. The kids pay attention to what you do. We pay attention to what we say. And one of the observations that I made was the churches that in their profiles and or their mission statements say we are a friendly, welcoming church usually are not. And one quick example, I came to a church not wearing my collar as a visitor. I sat down at one of the tables for the coffee hour. Every table filled up with people talking to each other, and nobody sat at the table where I was sitting alone. But their profile and their mission statement said, we are a warm and friendly, welcoming church. And there are other examples of that. The other one came from my childhood, where the best cookies were on the adult table. And the kids had a little card table with lower quality cookies on it and lemonade. And when I went to the adult table to get a good cookie, they sent me back to the kids' table.
Wow.
When I was confirmed, one of the things that it meant, and probably the most important thing it meant, is they can't exclude me anymore from the adult table.
From the good cookies. Oh, wow.
Yeah, one of the exercises that often is useful is to invite a friend who you already know has a faith community, right? You're not asking them to consider becoming one of us, right? But already is a member of a church, a different denomination, and ask them to come as a secret shopper, right? And then to just tell you what their experience was. So, I mean, some simple examples, finding what door do you enter? Right? There's always the door that everyone knows is open, and then the front door that is locked. Or whatever. I mean, little things like, where are the bathrooms? Does somebody greet me? Do I have a clue about using the bulletin? So, again, I'm going to tell a story without asking permission, but what the heck, I'm the bishop. So, Sandpoint, right? If you go into the church in Sandpoint, you are asked if you are familiar with the Episcopal liturgy or not. And if you say yes, you're handed the bulletin that assumes you know what you're doing. And if you say you're not, you're handed the full and complete bulletin. All right, so it's a way of giving a full and complete bulletin to those who need it. Right? And that was their way of saying, how do we not do it for everyone if you don't need it? You might have different ideas for how to do that, but they're really intentionally trying to welcome those who need extra help. Right? But also, just I remember asking my congregation to please leave the back 2 pews open, so that those who come late or those who come and are visitors and want to hide can do that. Because, of course, we usually fill from the back. But how do we just leave the back 2? Just the back 2. We're not asking for very much. But really, because we get so used to the way we do things, we can be blind to the way we do things.
In some way, I feel like I've been a secret shopper this weekend. And I want to commend this diocese for all the smiles, the hugs, and the welcome that my husband and I have felt as relatively new Episcopalians. And then I wanted to share with you a resource that has been very important to me. There's a movement, I believe it might be out of Northwestern University originally or somewhere in Illinois, called the Asset-Based Community Development.
Yes.
And for me, that has a lot to offer the church. It's about how to be good listeners, how to form connections, how to look at your neighborhood, wherever it is, in the church, outside the church. What are your healths and powers and strengths? What are your assets? Not so much what are the deficits that we so often focus on and put money into or whatever, but what are the gifts and assets that that particular community has, and how do we enhance those and hear one another's stories? And it also fits, the book is called, the recent book that's out is called The Connected Community, and it's by Russell and McCormick, and I highly recommend it.
Thank you, Caroline. And that's a great plug, although you don't know this, for please come to the gathering days. And part of that is, we actually did a gathering day on asset-based community development and asset mapping, and invited our congregations, and we've talked to our congregations about filling that out. And there's a place on the wider Episcopal Church website to do that. Mostly, it's been ignored, right? But I think the basic premise of really looking at your place and saying, what are our assets? And thinking beyond people, but people matter as well, right? What assets do you have if there's something that happens in your town? Who actually has the skills for various things? But also, do you have a big parish hall? Do you have a parking lot? Do you have a generator? Do you have lots of things that are that we don't necessarily think of? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really important when we're talking about everyday discipleship and what's going on outside your walls and how it connects with what you've already got.
It's a way to share your faith without using words.
Without using words,
absolutely.
just
Exactly.
with your life and friendship.
See, our thing, lots of our congregations have the little life packs, where they've put together little packs in the quart-sized Ziploc bags with some easily accessible, you don't need to heat it up food, often with a little statement from their congregation about who they are, where they can get more help. Just carry those in your car. You can hand them to somebody who's asking for help. That's an easy way and a good way to provide help for folks who are needing it. So, and then, one of the things we're trying to do is really say, how do our congregations that are doing really great stuff share that with one another? And so really inviting us to share about what's going on.
Do you do that at the gathering days?
Yeah, we try to do that at gathering days. And the Thursday Zooms are a great way for folks to hear about what's going on. Yes, over here. Sandy.
I just want to thank not only you, Bishop and Wendy, but all of your staff who put in countless hours for this wonderful convention.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good morning, Bishop. My name is Ben Shedlock. You know who I am, but for everyone else who doesn't, I'm fortunate enough to be married to Katie Shedlock, who's the pastor at the West Central Abbey. And I've been a clergy spouse for about 5-6 years, as Katie's been in the Methodist tradition. But she recently signed a letter of agreement with you, saying, here's how this works between me and the bishop and the diocese. And I wonder, from sort of an Episcopalian perspective, what does that letter of agreement look like for a clergy spouse, and what do you see that role as being?
Wow. So I will say that the challenge is that your bishop has been happily single her entire life. So I have no expectations that the clergy spouse is somehow the second clergy member, right? I mean, we certainly saw that growing up, where the wife of the priest, it was at that point always the wife, was also either the Sunday school teacher or the choir director or the organist or the unpaid secretary, expected to be in charge of the Women's Guild, better show up for everything. And I really think what I want is that people are disciples in their own way, right? You are a faithful Roman Catholic who has yet to see the light. And I am joking when I say that. But you offer your gifts, of helping us with grant writing and faithfully witnessing. And I don't think that for any of our clergy spouses, there should be the expectation that they somehow, as a clergy spouse, are expected to do more or different than any other member of the congregation, right? And I do think that it is really incumbent on our congregations to remember that children of clergy are children, right? And so, yeah, I mean, so like Sarah Gunter was unfortunate enough to be a PK, and that became a PK, a priest kid, as a teenager. I mean, can you imagine how horrible, right? But I think to really say we don't expect different from our laity than from any laity. We do expect baptismal covenant following, right? We invite us into being followers of Jesus and living out our baptismal covenant. But yeah, there's no letter of agreement with the spouse. I want to also say thank you to Wendy and Andrea. We have a small token of our appreciation for all you've done, because one needs swag.
Yes, yes, indeed.
And there's more swag. And so we just, Wendy, thank you so much for being with us and being part of us. And we hope you know that you are always, now forever, part of the Diocese of Spokane.
I am so relieved to hear that, because I don't know that I've ever been any place where I have felt so warmly welcomed, and I'm just really grateful to all of you. Thank you.
So we're going to take a little bit of time to set up for Eucharist. There is pre-Eucharist coffee hour continues. Eucharist starts at 10:30. But please have more coffee, get a bagel if you haven't had one. Get swag, and the swag will, we want you to purchase it before Eucharist starts.